I was 23 years old when I learned my father's hands had killed people. Not in war, not in self-defense, just killed them, and those same hands had braided my hair every Sunday morning for 16 years. My name is Angela Russo, and this is the story of how I discovered that everything I knew about my family was a lie. A carefully constructed, decades-long performance designed to keep me safe, keep me innocent, and keep me from ever asking the questions that could get us all killed. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start where it really begins, not with blood or bullets or FBI raids, but with normalcy. With the kind of childhood that made me believe I was the luckiest girl in New Jersey. We lived in a 3-bedroom colonial in Montclair, the kind of neighborhood where people waved to each other while mowing their lawns and argued about property lines with friendly passion. My father, Vincent Russo, or Vinny, as everyone called him, ran a waste management consulting company. That's what he told people. That's what I believed. He left for work at 7 every morning in a navy suit that my mother pressed the night before. He came home by 6, sometimes earlier, always with the same routine. He'd loosen his tie in the doorway, kiss my mother on the cheek, ruffle my hair, and ask, "How's my brilliant girl today?" I'd tell him about school, about my chemistry test or the fight I had with my best friend Monica or the boy who sat behind me in English class. He'd listen like I was describing matters of international importance, nodding seriously, asking follow-up questions that showed he actually cared. "This boy," he'd say, "he respectful? Dad, he just asked to borrow a pencil." Still, a man shows respect or he shows nothing. Remember that, Angie. My mother, Carla, would laugh and swat him with a dish towel. "She's 14, Vin, let her live," but he'd just smile. That warm, crinkly-eyed smile that made me feel protected from every danger in the world. Just looking out for my girl. Sundays were sacred in our house. My father would wake me up at 8, earlier than I ever wanted on a weekend, and we'd have our ritual. He'd sit me down in the kitchen, and while my mother made sauce, gravy, we called it, the kind that simmered for hours with pork neck bones and Italian sausage, he'd braid my hair. This big man with scarred knuckles and a voice that could boom across a room, would gently section my hair into 3 parts and weave them together with a patience that seemed impossible. He'd learned how to braid from YouTube. He told me once, spent weeks practicing on rope until he got it right. Why? I'd asked him when I was 12. "Because your mother's got enough to do," he said simply. And because I wanted to. After the braiding, we'd go to St. Catherine's for 9 o'clock mass. My father never missed it. Rain, snow, holidays. We were in that pew, 3rd row from the front on the left side. He'd hold my mother's hand during the readings and sing the hymns off key, unashamed. During communion, he'd close his eyes when the priest placed the host on his tongue. And his lips would move in silent prayer. I remember wondering what he prayed for. I imagined it was for us, for our family, for health and happiness and all the normal things fathers pray for. I was so wrong. The afternoons were for family. My Uncle Tommy would come over with his wife, Aunt Denise, and their 3 boys, my cousins who were loud and rough and made me laugh until my stomach hurt. Uncle Tommy looked like my father, same dark eyes and strong jaw, but he was louder, quicker to joke. Easier to read. My father's brother, Uncle Paul, would arrive later, always alone. He'd been divorced twice and had a sadness around his eyes that never quite went away, even when he smiled. He and my father would disappear into the garage sometimes, talking in low voices while my mother and aunt set the table. I never questioned it. Families have their rhythms, their private conversations, their inside jokes. This was just ours. We'd eat around 3. The whole family crowded around the extended dining table that my father had built himself in the garage. Meatballs, braciole, sausage, 3 different kinds of pasta, salad, bread still warm from the oven. My mother would pile food on everyone's plate, ignoring protests, insisting we were all too skinny. My father would sit at the head of the table, watching us all, occasionally catching my mother's eye and smiling. These were the moments I remember most clearly now, his face during those Sunday dinners. content, peaceful, almost like he was storing the memories away for later. Like he knew they wouldn't last forever. Angie, Uncle Tommy said one Sunday when I was 15, your father tells me you're thinking about college already. That true? Columbia, I said. Pre-med, my father beamed. Smartest kid in her class. Just like her old man, Uncle Paul said, raising his wine glass. But there was something in his tone, something I couldn't identify. Years later, I'd recognize it as irony. Bitterness, even. Nothing like me, my father said firmly. She's gonna be better, gonna help people. I reached over and squeezed his hand. You help people, Dad. Your company employs like 50 people. He looked at me then with an expression I couldn't read. Something like pain flickered across his face, gone so quickly I thought I'd imagined it. Not the same thing, sweetheart, he said quietly. Not the same thing at all. High school passed in the usual way. I studied, got good grades, joined the debate team and volunteered at the local hospital on weekends. My father was proud, endlessly proud. He came to every debate tournament, sitting in the back row with a small camera, recording everything. When I won the state championship junior year, he stood up and applauded so loudly that people turned to look. That's my daughter, he called out, unashamed. That's my Angie. I was embarrassed and thrilled in equal measure. But there were things, small things, things I noticed but didn't understand. Like how my father never talked about his childhood. When I'd ask about his parents, my grandparents who had died before I was born, he'd give vague answers. They were good people, worked hard. Your grandmother made the best strufoli at Christmas. But what were they like? Simple people, Angie, nothing exciting. Or how certain names would come up at dinner, men I didn't know, and the table would go quiet. My mother would stand abruptly to check on dessert. My uncles would find something fascinating about their wine glasses. How's Sal doing? Uncle Paul asked one night. My father's jaw tightened. We don't talk about that here. I'm just asking. I said we don't talk about it. The silence that followed was heavy, uncomfortable. I looked between them, confused, but no one explained. After a moment, my mother changed the subject, asking me about my upcoming history test, and the moment passed. Or the phone calls. Late at night, I'd hear the house phone ring and my father's footsteps in the hallway. He'd talk in the kitchen in a voice so low I could barely hear the rumble of it through my bedroom wall. Once, I crept to my door and pressed my ear against it. I told you, that's finished, my father was saying. I'm out. No, I don't care what Frankie says. My family, you tell him if he comes near my house, near my daughter, all. Yeah, you tell him that. The next morning, he was braiding my hair like nothing had happened, asking me about the school dance, slipping me $40 for a new dress. I didn't ask who Frankie was. I should have. There were the visitors too. Men in expensive cars who'd pull up to the house when my mother wasn't home. My father would meet them in the driveway, talking for a few minutes, his body language tense, different from the relaxed man I knew. They'd shake hands, and the men would leave, and my father would come back inside and ask if I wanted to order pizza for dinner. Who was that? I asked once. Nobody important. Old friend. He looked serious. My father smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Adults have boring business stuff, Angie. Don't worry about it. So I didn't, because I trusted him completely. Because fathers don't lie to their daughters about who they are. Or so I thought. The crack in my reality started small. A phone call on a Tuesday afternoon in March of my senior year. I was home alone, studying for my AP biology exam, when the house phone rang. We still had a landline. My father insisted on it, said cell phones weren't reliable. Russo residence, I answered. Silence on the other end. Then breathing. Hello? I said again. Is Vincent there? A man's voice, rough, unfamiliar. He's at work. Can I take a message? Another pause. Tell him Dante called. Tell him we need to talk about the old days. Okay, and your number? He's got it. Click. I wrote the message on the pad by the phone. Dante called. Wants to talk about old days. When my father came home, I handed it to him. The change in his face was instant. The color drained from his cheeks. His hand, reaching for the paper, trembled slightly. When did he call? Like an hour ago. Who's Dante? Nobody. He crumpled the paper. If he calls again, don't answer. Let it go to the machine. Dad, you're scaring me. He seemed to realize it then, forcing his features to relax. Sorry, sweetheart, old business associate, we didn't part on good terms. Just don't talk to him if he calls again, okay? Okay, but that night, I heard him on the phone again, his voice harder than I'd ever heard it. You got some fucking nerve calling my house. I don't care, that's ancient history, Dante. Dead and buried. You threaten me, you threaten my family? You remember who you're talking to? I pulled my pillow over my head, suddenly not wanting to hear anymore. The next incident came 3 weeks later. I was at the mall with Monica, trying on prom dresses, when my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Angela Russo? Yes, this is Special Agent Mitchell from the FBI. I need to ask you some questions about your father. My heart stopped. I stepped away from Monica, lowering my voice. What? Why? Can you come down to the field office? Or we can meet somewhere public if you prefer. I don't understand. My father runs a waste management company. What does the FBI want with him? Agent Mitchell sighed. Miss Russo, your father hasn't been truthful with you about several things. We'd like to explain. I hung up. My hands were shaking. Monica looked over, holding up a blue dress. What do you think of this one? It's great, I said automatically. I need to. I'll be right back. I went to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall. The FBI. Why would the FBI be calling me about my father? There had to be a mistake. Some confusion with someone else named Vincent Russo. But I called him anyway, my fingers clumsy on the phone. Hey, sweetheart, he answered, cheerful. How's the dress shopping? Dad, the FBI just called me. Silence. Long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Dad, where are you? His voice had changed completely. Cold, sharp. The Willowbrook Mall. Dad, what's going on? Stay there. Stay in public. I'm coming to get you. Don't talk to anyone you don't know. Don't go anywhere alone. I'll be there in 20 minutes. You're really scaring me now. I know. I'm sorry. Just do what I say. Please. He was there in 15 minutes. I saw him through the food court, moving quickly, his eyes scanning the crowd. When he spotted me, relief flooded his face. He pulled me into a hug. You okay? I'm fine. Dad, what is going on? Not here. Let's go home. In the car, I waited for him to explain. He drove in silence, both hands on the wheel, checking the rearview mirror more than necessary. Are you in trouble? I finally asked. It's complicated. That's not an answer. I know. We pulled into our driveway. My mother's car was already there. He must have called her. She was waiting in the living room, her face tight with worry. Angie, she said, standing up. Sit down, honey. Someone tell me what's happening. My father and mother exchanged a look, some wordless communication passing between them. Finally, my father sat down heavily on the couch. There are things about my life, about our family, that I haven't told you, he began. Clearly, I was trying to protect you. From what? He rubbed his face with both hands. From my past, from the truth of who I used to be. Used to be? Dad, you're not making sense. My mother sat beside me, taking my hand. Your father grew up in a different world than the one we've raised you in. A harder world. He made choices when he was young, choices he regrets now, but choices that, they don't just go away. What kind of choices? My father looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before in his eyes. Shame. I was involved with bad people, Angie. Organized crime. The Genovese family, based out of Newark and New York. I was never a made man. I'm only half Italian, my mother was Irish, but I was an associate. I ran numbers, I collected debts. I did enforcement. The words didn't make sense. They were in English, but they might as well have been in a foreign language. Enforcement, I repeated. What does that mean? It means I hurt people who didn't pay what they owed. It means I threatened them. And sometimes, Sometimes it meant worse than that. The room tilted. I pulled my hand from my mother's. No, I said. No, you're my dad. You braid my hair. You go to church. You cry at Disney movies. All of that's true, he said quietly. But so is this. How long? I was involved from the time I was 17 until I was 31. 14 years. 31, I said. I was born when you were 32. I got out because of you, my mother said. When I told your father I was pregnant, he went to the bosses and said he wanted out. It's not something they usually allow, but your father, he had information. He had leverage. He negotiated. Negotiated what? That he'd keep his mouth shut, move to the suburbs, go completely straight. In exchange, they'd leave us alone. Let me have a normal life. Let me be a real father. I stood up, needing distance. So the waste management company? Is real, completely legitimate. I learned the business, built it from nothing. Everything you see, everything we have, it's clean money. But the FBI is calling me. So something isn't finished. My father's jaw clenched. There are people who don't like that I got out. Who think I know too much. Who worry that one day I might cooperate with the feds. And there are agents who hope the same thing, who keep tabs on me, hoping I'll slip up or get desperate enough to talk. Will you talk to them? Never, he said firmly. I made a deal. I keep my word. It's the only thing that keeps you safe. Safe, I laughed, but it came out wrong, almost hysterical. You think I'm safe? The FBI is calling me. Who's Dante? The guy who called the house. My father's face darkened. Someone who should know better than to reach out after all these years. What does he want? He wants me to do a job. One last thing. Says it's easy money, in and out. And if you say no? My father didn't answer. He didn't have to. The implications hung in the air between us. My mother stood. You're not doing it, Vin. You promised. We're not going back to that life. I know. So what happens now? I asked. Now, my father said, we wait. We stay alert. We stay together. And we hope that Dante gets the message and leaves us alone. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to reconcile the father I knew with the man he'd described. The man who had hurt people. Who had done worse than that. What did worse than that mean? I knew. Of course I knew, but I couldn't let myself think it directly. Around 2 in the morning, I heard footsteps in the hallway. My door opened slightly, and my father's silhouette appeared. You awake? He whispered. Yeah. He came in and sat on the edge of my bed, like he used to when I was little and had nightmares. I know you have questions, he said. A million of them. Ask. I sat up, pulling my knees to my chest. Did you kill people? He was quiet for a long time. Yes, the word hung there. Simple. Devastating. How many? Does it matter? Yes. 3, he said finally. Directly. There were others that I was involved with, but not the one who pulled the trigger. I felt sick. Why? Because I was ordered to. Because they were people who had crossed the family, who had stolen or snitched or shown disrespect in ways that couldn't be overlooked. Because I was young and stupid and thought that life would give me power and respect. Did it? He laughed bitterly. It gave me nightmares. It gave me a drinking problem that took me years to kick. It gave me enemies who will remember my face until the day they die. Some power. Why did you stay so long? Because leaving isn't like quitting a job, Angie. You don't give 2 weeks notice. You leave, they kill you. Or they kill someone you love. That's how it works. So I stayed until I had something valuable enough to trade for my freedom. What did you trade? Information about a pipeline. Money laundering through legitimate businesses. I had the details, the accounts, the players. I told them I'd written it all down, left it with someone trustworthy. If anything happened to me or my family, it would go straight to the FBI. A dead man's switch. Exactly. It was enough. Barely. I looked at his face in the dim light from the hallway. He looked older suddenly, tired in a way that had nothing to do with the late hour. Do you regret it? I asked. The life you left? Every single day. But I don't regret leaving. Best thing I ever did was walk away. Become a father. Become the man I should have been all along. The braiding, I said suddenly. The church, the family dinners, were any of those real? Or were they just part of the performance? He reached out and took my hand. They were the realest things in my life. Maybe the only real things. You, your mother, the life we built. That's not a performance. Angie, that's who I really am. The other guy, the one from before, he's the stranger. He's the lie. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly. I love you, Dad, I said, because it was true, even though I was angry and scared and confused. I love you too, sweetheart. More than anything, and I'm going to keep you safe. I promise you that. He left, and I lay back down, but sleep didn't come. How do you sleep when you've just learned your whole life is built on a foundation of violence and secrets? The next few weeks were strange. I went through the motions: school, debate practice, studying for finals. But everything felt different, like I was watching my life from outside my body. My friends would talk about their problems: who is dating who, college applications, prom drama. And I'd think, my father killed 3 people. I couldn't talk about it with anyone. Who would I tell? Monica? Hey, so funny story about my dad. I started watching him differently, looking for signs of the man he'd been. And I found them, once I knew to look. The way he assessed every room he entered, noting exits and potential threats. The way his eyes tracked certain types of men, the ones in expensive suits with hard faces. The way he positioned himself at restaurants, always with his back to the wall, facing the door. The scars on his knuckles weren't from working with his hands. They were from hitting people. The old friends, who called weren't friends at all. And the Sunday prayers. I wondered now what he was asking forgiveness for. 2 months passed. I finished senior year, got accepted to Columbia with a full scholarship. My father threw a party, invited the whole family. Uncle Tommy got drunk and made a speech about how proud he was, how I was going to be the one who made it, who did something important with my life. Not like us knuckleheads, he said, raising his glass. You're gonna save lives, Angie. Gonna be a doctor. My father stood and hugged him, but I saw the look they exchanged. Something sad and resigned. Later, when most people had left, I found Uncle Paul alone on the back deck, smoking a cigarette. Thought you quit, I said. He smiled. I did. Then I started again. Then I quit. The cycle continues. I sat down next to him. Can I ask you something? Shoot. Did you know about Dad's past? He took a long drag, exhaling slowly. I was there, kid. Not just knew about it. Lived it. Me and Tommy both. Are you still in? No. Your dad got us out when he negotiated his own exit. Insisted on it. Said he wouldn't keep quiet unless they let his whole family walk away clean. That must have been hard for them to accept. Nearly impossible. But your dad had good information. And he had one other thing going for him. What? He was smart. Scary smart. The bosses knew that if he wanted to fuck them, he could. So they let him go, let us go, because keeping him happy was safer than making him an enemy. I absorbed this. Do you miss it? Uncle Paul laughed. But it was hollow. Sometimes. The money was better. The respect was different. When you walk into a room and people know who you're with, doors open. Problems disappear. It's a rush. But I sleep better now. I can look at my sons and not worry they'll grow up to be what I was. And I don't have to look over my shoulder every second of every day. He looked at me. Your dad did right by all of us, getting us out. Don't forget that. No matter what else you learn. What else is there to learn? He stubbed out his cigarette. Nothing you need to know, kid. Some stories are better left buried. But of course, buried stories never stay buried. Not forever. I started at Columbia in September. My father drove me to the city, helped me move into my dorm, tried not to cry when he hugged me goodbye. You call if you need anything, he said. Anything at all. I will, Dad. And Angie? Be careful. The city's different from Montclair. Keep your wits about you. I'll be fine. He nodded, but I could see the worry in his eyes. The fear of letting me out of his sight, into a world he couldn't control. College was everything I'd hoped for. I threw myself into my classes, made new friends, discovered I loved organic chemistry in a way that surprised me. I went home most weekends at first, but gradually the visits became less frequent. Once a month, then every 6 weeks. My father never complained. He'd ask about my classes, my friends, whether I was eating enough. My mother would pack containers of food for me to take back: pasta, meatballs, her special cookies. "You're too thin," she'd say, same as always. "I'm the same weight I've always been. Still too thin." It felt normal. It felt like before, like maybe we could move past the revelations of senior year and just be a family again. Then, in November of my sophomore year, I came home for Thanksgiving and found my father packing a suitcase. "Where are you going?" I asked. "Business trip," he said, not looking at me. "You never go on business trips." "Well, this one can't be avoided." My mother was in the kitchen, her face tight and pale. "Mom, what's going on?" "Nothing for you to worry about, honey. Your father just has to handle some things." But I could tell she was terrified. That night, after my father had left, I confronted her. "Tell me the truth." She sat down at the kitchen table, suddenly looking much older than her 51 years. "Dante showed up at your father's office last week," she said. "Said the deal is off. Said people are getting arrested, the old structure is falling apart. And everyone's scrambling to cover their tracks. He wants your father to testify that certain business dealings were legitimate, to provide cover for some of the higher-ups. And if Dad refuses, then Dante made it very clear what happens. To him, to us, to you." Fear, cold and sharp, shot through me. "So what's Dad doing?" "He's going to meet with someone. Someone who might be able to help. I don't know who. He wouldn't tell me." 3 days later, my father came home. He looked exhausted, defeated. "What happened?" my mother asked. "I bought us time," he said. "But it's not over." He wouldn't say more, not with me there. But that night, I heard them arguing in their bedroom, my mother's voice rising in a way I'd never heard before. "You promised me, you promised we were done with this." "I know, baby, I know. But what do you want me to do?" "They're not giving me a choice." "There's always a choice. Not if I want to keep you both alive." Silence. Then my mother crying, and my father murmuring soft words I couldn't make out. I went back to school with a knot of dread in my stomach that wouldn't go away. The spring semester was hard. I couldn't focus. My grades slipped. I jumped every time my phone rang, expecting bad news. It came in March. "Miss Russo?" The voice on the phone was calm, professional. "This is Detective Ramirez with the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office. Your father has been arrested." The world tilted. "What? For what?" "Conspiracy to commit murder. He's being held without bail. Your mother is aware. She's at the courthouse now." I don't remember the train ride home. I remember standing outside the courthouse, seeing my mother's face, and knowing immediately that this was the thing we'd been dreading. The past had finally caught up. The details came out slowly, through lawyers and news reports and hushed conversations with my uncles. Dante had been wearing a wire. For months, he'd been caught on his own charges and had flipped, agreeing to bring down everyone he could to save himself. And he'd gotten my father on tape discussing the old days, including details about the 3 men my father had killed decades ago. "But they can't prosecute those," Uncle Tommy said. "Statute of limitations. They're not prosecuting those," the lawyer explained. "They're prosecuting a conspiracy to commit a new murder." Dante set him up. He'd tell Vinny that someone needed to be taken care of, and Vinny would say things like, "I'm not in that life anymore." Dante would push, and Vinny would say, "If I were going to do something like that, I'd do it this way," trying to talk hypothetically, trying to deflect. But on tape, taken out of context, it sounds like planning. "That's bullshit," I said. "He was clearly just trying to get Dante to leave him alone." "I agree, but the prosecution has a different interpretation. And with his history, with Dante's testimony about his past crimes." "How long?" my mother asked quietly. "If convicted, 25 to life." I visited him in jail. They brought him out in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. When he saw me, tears filled his eyes. "I'm sorry," he said through the glass. "God, Angie, I'm so sorry. It's not your fault. Dante set you up. It is my fault. If I'd been someone different, lived a different life, this wouldn't be happening. We're going to fight this. The lawyer says." The lawyer is being optimistic because we're paying him. The truth is, with my history, with a cooperating witness, the odds aren't good. So what do we do? He looked at me for a long moment. "You go back to school. You finish your degree. You become a doctor. You live the life I wanted for you. I can't just abandon you. You're not abandoning me. You're doing exactly what I've worked for since the day you were born. You're being better than I ever was." The trial started that summer. I took a leave from school to be there every day, sitting behind my mother in the courtroom, watching the prosecution paint my father as a cold-blooded criminal who had never really left the life. Who was planning a murder when he was caught? Dante testified. He looked older, grayer, beaten down. But he told his story clearly, describing how my father had discussed the best way to kill someone and dispose of the body. "And did he seem reluctant?" the prosecutor asked. "At first," Dante said. "But once we got into the details, he warmed up, started offering suggestions. It was clear he'd thought about this kind of thing before." "Objection," our lawyer said. "Speculation." Sustained. But the damage was done. The jury had heard it. Our defense was simple. My father was a reformed man being entrapped by an old associate trying to save himself. The planning was hypothetical, an attempt to placate Dante and make him go away. My father had no intention of actually committing violence. I testified, told the jury about the man I knew, the Sunday morning braids, the church attendance, the legitimate business he'd built. The tears were real as I described what kind of father he'd been. "Miss Russo," the prosecutor said on cross-examination, "were you aware of your father's criminal history before last year?" "No. So he lied to you for your entire life." "He protected me by lying." Objection withdrawn. No further questions. The jury deliberated for 3 days. When they came back, I knew from their faces. Guilty on all counts. My mother made a sound like an animal in pain. My father just closed his eyes. At sentencing, he was allowed to make a statement. "Your Honor," he said, standing, "I won't pretend I've been a good man my whole life. I've done things I'm deeply ashamed of, things I've spent the last 20+ years trying to make up for. I thought if I could be a good father, a good husband, a contributing member of society, that it would balance the scales somehow. I was wrong. You can't balance those scales. But I swear to this court, to my family, to God, I never intended to hurt anyone ever again. I was trying to avoid exactly that. And I failed. But not in the way the prosecution claims. I failed by not walking away the second Dante contacted me. I should have gone to the police immediately. Instead, I tried to handle it myself, and here we are." He turned to look at me and my mother. "To my girls, I'm sorry. For everything. I love you both more than life itself." The judge gave him 20 years. With good behavior, he could be out in 15. He'd be 73 years old. I went back to school eventually, but I was different. Harder, more skeptical. I looked at people and wondered what they were hiding, what secrets lurked behind their smiles. I still visited him, once a month, every month, like clockwork. We'd sit on opposite sides of the glass and talk about normal things. My classes, hospital rotations, the weather. We never talked about the trial or his case or the appeals that kept getting denied. One visit, about 5 years in, he said something that stuck with me. "You know what the worst part is? Not the guilt. I deserve that. Not even the time, though God knows it's hard. The worst part is knowing that everything I did, leaving that life, building something clean, being a real father, it still wasn't enough. The past doesn't care that you changed. It waits, and eventually, it collects. That's not fair," I said. "No," he agreed. "It's not, but it's true. I graduated medical school, top of my class. My father wasn't there. He'd asked me not to arrange a special visit because he didn't want to take away from my day by not being there. My mother came, Uncle Tommy and Uncle Paul, and when I walked across that stage, I could almost feel my father's pride. Even from 200 miles away in his cell, I matched into a residency at Mount Sinai, emergency medicine. My mother worried it was too dangerous, too stressful. I like the chaos, I told her. I like solving problems in real time, making quick decisions. I'm good at it. What I didn't say was that I liked it because there was no time to think, to remember, to dwell on the man sitting in prison who had once braided my hair on Sunday mornings. Years passed. My mother aged faster than she should have. The stress, the loneliness, the financial strain. My father's legal fees had drained their savings. I helped where I could, but resident salaries don't go far in New Jersey. Uncle Tommy died of a heart attack when I was 29. Uncle Paul followed 2 years later, cancer. At Paul's funeral, there were men I didn't recognize, men with hard faces who stood in the back and left without speaking to anyone. Who were they? I asked my mother. Ghosts, she said, just ghosts. My father had been in prison for 12 years when I met Marcus. He was an orthopedic surgeon, brilliant and kind, with no family drama, no secrets, no complicated past. We dated for a year before I told him about my father. That must have been hard, he said, learning all that. It was. But he's still your father. Yes, then I'd like to meet him sometime. If that's okay. I took Marcus to visit on a Saturday in October. My father was 67 now, gray-haired and thinner than I remembered. But his eyes lit up when he saw us. This him? He asked when we sat down. Yeah, Marcus, meet my dad. Dad, meet Marcus. They talked for the full hour. About medicine, about me, about sports and politics and everything except the reason my father was sitting in a prison visiting room. At the end, my father leaned close to the glass. You take care of my girl, he said to Marcus. I will, sir. And you, he looked at me, you be happy. That's all I want, for you to be happy. We got married 6 months later. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. My father couldn't be there, but we video called him afterward, showed him pictures. He cried. Beautiful, he kept saying. You're so beautiful, sweetheart. I was 32 when I got the call. My father had collapsed in the prison yard. Brain aneurysm. He was in the prison hospital, unconscious, the prognosis poor. I drove through the night to get there, Marcus beside me. They let me see him, a special dispensation. He was hooked up to machines, breathing with the help of a ventilator. I held his hand, the same hand that had braided my hair and killed people and built me a life away from the violence he'd known. I'm here, Dad, I said. I'm right here. His eyes opened, just for a moment. He squeezed my hand. Then he was gone. They let us have a funeral. A real one, not the abbreviated prison ceremony. We buried him next to my mother's parents in a cemetery in Bloomfield. There was a good turnout. Employees from his company, people from the old neighborhood, even a few of the ghosts from Uncle Paul's funeral. After everyone else had left, I stood alone at the grave. I don't know if you were a good man, I said quietly. I don't know if people can really change, or if we're all just running from who we used to be. But I know you loved me. I know you tried, and I know that has to count for something. The wind picked up, rustling the flowers people had left. I'm going to be okay, Dad. I'm going to be happy, like you wanted. I'm going to save lives. And sometimes, when I do, I'm going to think of you and the lives you took, and I'm going to hope that somehow, somewhere, that balances the scales. I walked back to the car where Marcus was waiting. That was 3 years ago. I'm 35 now. I'm the head of emergency medicine at Mount Sinai. I'm good at what I do. I have a husband who loves me, friends, a life that's stable and clean and normal. But sometimes, late at night, when I can't sleep, I think about my father. About the man he was and the man he became. About the Sunday morning braids and the 3 bodies and the orange jumpsuit and the tears in his eyes when he said he was sorry. I think about how we're all just products of our choices, carrying them forward whether we want to or not. How the past is always there, waiting. I wonder if he found peace in those last moments. If he felt like he'd succeeded or failed. If he died thinking of the man he'd killed or the daughter he'd loved. I'll never know. What I do know is this: I am Vincent Russo's daughter. That means I carry his blood, his name, his legacy. The good and the bad. The love and the violence. The Sunday dinners and the prison visits. And I have to decide what to do with that. How to honor the man he tried to be without forgetting the man he was. So I go to work. I save lives. I hold the hands of scared patients and tell them it's going to be okay. I make quick decisions in chaotic moments. I do the thing my father wanted most for me: I help people. And every Sunday morning, even though I haven't worn braids in years, I think of his hands in my hair. Gentle, patient, scarred, those same hands. I guess that's the truth about people. We're all contradictions, all walking paradoxes. We're capable of the most terrible things and the most beautiful, sometimes with the same pair of hands. My father taught me that, not through his words, but through his life, through the reality of who he was versus the man I thought I knew. I grew up loving him. Then I found out who he really was. And somehow, impossibly, I still love him. Maybe that makes me naive. Maybe it makes me complicit. Maybe it just makes me human. I don't have the answer. All I have is the truth. As messy and complicated as it is, Vincent Russo was my father. He was a killer. He was a protector. He was a liar. He was the most honest man I've ever known. He was all of those things. And I was his daughter. I still am. That's my story. That's the secret I carry. The truth I live with. And now you know it too.